How are you?
Good. You look great.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel great because I'm old and not fat, which makes life so good, you know? Uh,
Uh-huh.
I would like to introduce everybody to the wonderful, famous John Pierre, or we call him JP. So, what's so really cool about JP is he's exciting. Okay, there are people who are kind of dull and boring and don't, they just don't have a lot of pizzazz. Well, this guy, he has all the pizzazz in the world, so you want to hear what he has to say. That's one thing I like about you. You combine a little humor and just so much fun. So thank you, JP. I have to tell you, he has been in this 35 years now, fitness and nutrition, right?
38. Yeah.
38? Oh wow, I have an old thing. Um, and you do have these cutting edge programs. What are they called?
Well, most of my cutting edge programs, I did were brain building for older adults. And those were done almost 30 years ago in retirement communities and adult daycare centers.
Wow, that is fantastic. And you have a couple of books, right?
Yeah, a couple of books. I've done a lot of work with Chef AJ. We did a lot of programs together, The Ultimate Weight Loss. And then,
Yeah.
of course, we're doing the reboot too. So, yeah, I've done a bunch of programs with her and a lot of DVDs I have too.
Yeah. And it's in the name of your group is called
Living with Harmony.
Living with Harmony. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
my nonprofit.
And what's plant-based living then?
Planet-based
Oh,
living.
planet. I meant planet. I meant
Yeah, it's
planet.
just a term we coined that is taking veganism to a whole nother level where we consider the environment and we consider other human beings also. They're, as just as important as ourselves. So basically it's ahimsa, compassion and reverence for all expressions of life.
Oh, I love that. I love the ahimsa. A lot of people don't know what that word means. Can you explain that to them?
It's just a Sanskrit term that does mean compassion or reverence for all beings. So, for instance, I have 20 rescued animals and there's a lot of water bowls. And when I get a lot of fruit in the house, there's hundreds of fruit flies. And those fruit flies end up in the water bowl. So 4 or 5 times a day, I take a little tiny piece of paper and I rescue 5, 6 at a time. And I do that
Oh,
all day. And that's because they're, in my mind, just as equal to my animals or the majestic whale or a dolphin or anything. They're expressions of life that want to live. They feel pain. And so, it's our duty to try to lessen the burden to some of these creatures that can't take care of themselves a lot of times because of humans. We encroach on their lifestyle, and that's why you get coyotes coming into people's backyards. Well, we've encroached in their territories.
they're not mean and they don't mean to be cruel to you and they don't eat your pets because they want to. They have to because
Right.
they have no place to go or anything to eat.
Right. Exactly.
So keep your pets indoors. But it just yeah, we are encroaching upon our whole earth right now and it's scary, but we're here to talk about how people can make it simple to keep that darn weight off. You want to
Right.
go ahead and give us your presentation?
Sure. Well, we had two amazing doctors that were just out of the planet. They did amazing. So they covered a lot of what I would say. I
Mhm.
just want to say I'll kind of go at a little different angle. I've done this for 38 years, and that's 38 years of seeing clients. So that's boot camps at 6 a.m., then a client or two, then boot camp at 9 a.m., and then going to retirement homes, senior centers, seeing kids with attention deficit, Down syndrome, and then going back and doing a 6 p.m. boot camp. So it's been all day and all night that I've seen clients and worked with people. So I
Yeah.
have a good idea what works. I've worked with professional athletes, lots of different celebrities and movie stars, rock stars, Fortune 500 execs. So I have a wide variety, but people are basically the same physiologically. They have the
Yeah.
same organs and everything. Where they differ is their environment and they differ in their emotions. And the key thing is they differ in the amount of trauma and stress that they've had and currently have. And that's a huge thing to consider in terms of weight loss, because a lot of my clients are actually trauma therapists. I teach at trauma conferences. And so I do have a lot of clients that I work with that are therapists. And the one thing that I've seen, you know, obviously once COVID hit is a high amounts of stress and anxiety. But even before that, I was seeing lots of stress and anxiety. But the one thing I learned the most working with trauma therapists and being in the trauma field is that the body does keep the score. What's happened to you as a child just keeps building and building and building until it gets addressed. And a lot of times these things don't get addressed because, to be honest with you, most people don't want to re-suffer. They don't want to go back and, re-experience the pain. And so they don't get trauma trauma therapy, and they don't get taken care of. So though I continue to work with the diet, the way the doctors recommend, and the exercise, of course, I really approached my coaching mostly emotionally and spiritually. And I think it's really important to have a spiritual component, because that's one of the things that you can help drive you. I've worked with a lot of clients that say, look, I positively can't give up sugar. And I said, really? And they said, no, I've tried. No matter what I do. I said, well, what would happen if somebody kidnapped your child? And they said that we're going to, dump your child in a river unless you give up sugar. They look at me and they say, well, I could give up sugar then. So really, it's weight loss has a lot to do with leverage. How do you leverage yourself to be strong and powerful? We live in a very weak society. We have perfect temperatures. Everything's nice and smooth. We can stay in a soft bed. We have lush lifestyles. But, if you keep living that way, you never develop any resilience. And so I was on the phone with 2 therapists the other day that I was working with. And one of the things that I did talk to them about, both of them, was how important it is to have some resilience in your life. So when trauma and stress come to you, you're used to dealing with it. And as you know, Linda, being an aerobics instructor and personal trainer for so long, that translates. Physical exercise is discomfort, right? It's not comfort. And so as you push past that pain and discomfort, you start feeling a little prouder. You're like, wow, yesterday I could do 8 reps. Today I did 9. Yesterday I was on the treadmill for 12 minutes. Today it was 13. That starts building your confidence, and it also builds your mental resiliency. And so that's one of the things that I really focus on with my clients. The diet is easy. When celebrities come to me and they say, hey, look, I've got 2 months. I need to lose all this weight. One of the first things I say to them, and I don't say this to be mean, and I'm not trying to be mean, but I just say to them, well, how much can you suffer? Because if you want quick weight loss, well, then you're going to have to suffer. But if you do it slow and steady, let's not call it suffering, but you're going to just experience a little different of a sensation. And let's call it a little uncomfortableness. But it's not suffering as if I was working with a celebrity as 2 months to lose 30 or 40 pounds. So I think it's important for people to develop that resiliency, because you're always going to have temptations coming in. Everywhere you go, AJ has always said something interesting. She said, when you go to the Ace Hardware or Lowe's or Home Depot, there's candy right there when you check out. And it's so true. It's omnipresent, our temptations all the time. And eating, most people that I've worked with never have been really addicted to food. They've been addicted to processed food. And that's a big difference, because like I was saying to a therapist the other day, let's not call it food that you're addicted to. Let's call it processed food. And then let's clarify it even more and say it's a drug, because that's really what it is. It's so refined, just like cocaine, right, is refined. It's the same thing. It's gotten refined to such a high level that it actually acts like a drug. I mean, it's the unholy trinity, salt, oil, and sugar, right? These things are not natural in nature. Where do you find salt in nature? Where do you find oil in nature? And where do you find sugar? They're bound with foods, right? So we extract them and we change the chemistry. And all of a sudden you start having this, you get this pleasure juice, this dopamine that gets produced all the time, and you become very addicted to it. It's a very, parents will sell their child for a snort of cocaine or a hit of crack. That's how powerful it is. So I think, as the doctors were saying, the plant-based diet, that's pretty obvious. Of course, we need to do that. And of course, we need to exercise. So I just tried to focus a little bit more on developing that resiliency, and also making sure that you try to ease your way into being around temptations. Like you and I are ethical vegans. So we could go into a bakery that has dairy and eggs, and we're not tempted at all. That's against our our code of conduct. So we're not tempted. And for the average person that it's not that way, their ethics isn't, vegan, you're always going to be tempted. If you go into a weight loss program without having a code of conduct and standards or a religious belief you follow, it's going to be very tempting for you. It's going to be very hard. And then once you dance with the devil and you have this refined product, which is a drug, and it gets a hold of you, it's pretty tough. I mean, I've worked with everybody from, every drug imaginable, all the alcohol, anorexics, bulimics, sex addicts, kleptomaniacs. I've worked with them all. And ultimately, all they're trying to do, every single one of them and all the food addicts, are just trying to change the brain chemistry. They're just trying to change it. And here's the key thing, you need to memorize this and write this down and think about it, is you're feeling a sensation. Just like when you get an itch, you don't just let it go, you scratch it because it bothers you, right? Well, you're having a feeling, a sensation of anxiety or depression or whatever it is, and you can't deal with it. Where, like, say, Joe and Fred, who are used to training this way, they can deal with it. And if you're in the military, you don't get to scratch an itch. And the reason is because in combat, if you lift your hand to scratch your nose, the enemy can see you and you'll be dead. So you're trained a certain way. And so it's the same thing here with people who are trying to get healthier or lose weight. We just need to be very conscientious about slowly easing our way into this and set the bar. Don't set the bar so high for yourself. With my clients, literally, people think I'm joking when I say this, but some of my clients that are, say, let's just say, I'm just kind of making up something, but a truck driver that's maybe 200 pounds overweight, my main goal is if they will put a piece of tomato on their hamburger. That's my first goal. I have to set the bar at that level, because if I ask them to have a veggie burger, which is my goal for them 2 months down the line, they're going to get disappointed and they're going to quit. So don't set your goals so super high, because you're not going to be used to dealing with all these sensations. Set the goals low. And then as you make that goal, 2 push-ups, tomorrow's 2 1/4. Then 2 1/2, and then 3. Don't go from 2 to 3 or 3 to 5. Don't do that. Go slow. And the other thing, and this is the hardest thing for, I think, people to really hear, I've worked with some people that I asked them about their trauma from childhood to now, and they said, no, I've really not had any trauma. And then they proceed to tell me all the trauma they've had in college of being assaulted and beaten up and having no friends. And I said, you just said that you've never had any trauma. And they said, well, is that trauma? Yeah, of course it is. Trauma isn't just getting blown up, right, or shot. Trauma is anything that throws you off kilter. It throws you off your axis. And so I think it's very important that people address trauma. When I did this one particular training, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score, and I did his training for therapists, it's such a beautiful name, The Body Keeps the Score, because that's exactly what happens. Your body physically, of course, keeps the score, and emotionally, it's keeping the score. And depending on what frame of psychology you believe in, there's a system called internal family systems, and it talks about how we all have different parts of personalities in us. Sometimes that child who was wounded, as a child, and now you're 40, is making decisions in your life based on the wounds that they had. So I think getting therapy, and I don't mean talk therapy, I mean trauma therapy, is really, really important. And, I have my retreat in Chicago in May, and we bring in one trauma therapist and then we bring in another therapist, because that's how important it is to address these traumas. Because the reason why people are overweight, one of the reasons, is because they're always constantly medicating with processed foods that make them feel good. But people who are balanced and healthy and normal, they get a little fun out of eating, but then they have fun exercising, they have fun with their family, they have fun with their animals, they have fun contributing and, volunteering. When I wake up in the morning and I have 20 animals to take care of, the last thing in the world I would ever think about is having fun with food, because I'm having so much fun with my animals. That high lasts all day for me. So just take a look at your life and ask yourself, are you deficient actually in vitamin F, that vitamin fun? Are you deficient in it? Where in your life are you having pleasure other than with processed foods? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it
Because
does.
a lot of vegans, they're still eating refined foods. About, if you look at the standard American diet, about 92% of that diet is animal products and processed foods. That's about 8% of your diet is left for plant matter. I've got news for you. Plant matter isn't fun for most people, right? So that's one of the reasons is people are medicating with that animal product and the processed foods. Well, I've got news for you. The vegan community does something very similar, because they're eating all the processed burgers and hot dogs and lunch meats and vegan ice creams and Oreos. And then we also, I don't know the exact number, I'm just kind of making this up, but similar to a standard American diet, it may be 8 or 9 or 10%, of plant matter. So again, they are constantly medicating with processed foods, just like the animal people are eating animal products and processed foods.
Well, about 60%, I know at least 60% of my 5,300 people in my meetup are overweight and obese. And they're eating the processed food and the oils and the sugars and the salts and all that. They're just driving through fast food, which is full of oil, and they just can't help but stay fat. And they don't know why they are, because they think being vegan is the way to get skinny, and it isn't. I was a fat vegan for a while, for a few years, because I was eating, I wasn't even eating oil, and I was a fat vegan because I was still eating the processed food. I was
Right.
eating vegan hot dogs, had no oil.
Right.
And
And if you remember, though, when AJ has been vegan, I think over 40 years, I've been about 40. But when I started in 83, there wasn't even a soy milk out then. There was a powder called Soy Quick, which was ground up soybeans
I
that you
remember
added to water. I mean, they should have used it in the poison control center to induce vomiting. It was terrible. And so we only had one burger back then. It was called the mud burger, and it was frozen. And all it was chopped up vegetables and I think sunflower seeds. So there wasn't that many tasty processed foods in the vegan community.
No.
As soon as they start coming in at about 85, we all start eating, right? Just like anyone else. But it was that pre-processed foods that the vegan diet was really healthy for you. But I think a lot of people think being vegan and eating processed foods that's all they need to do. And that's not true, because it's not so much what they're not eating. It's they're not eating enough vegetable and plant matter. They're not getting enough phytonutrients to protect their skin and their cells and their immune system. All the different carotenoids and polyphenols. We're not getting enough of that. So I think it's important for everybody here to follow the doctor's advice about the eating. That for sure we need to do, and keeping your environment clean, because I think that every time you're allowing yourself to be exposed to temptation, as I said earlier, most people are weak and the devil comes calling, and then you're dancing with the devil, and before you know it, that's it. You don't get out of that grip. That's a hard one. So lessen the temptation, but you want to eventually, like us, we don't get tempted, especially with animal products, right? I mean, we're not tempted by that at all, because that's not in our code of conduct. And then I would say the other thing is just kind of remember mentally that cookies and ice cream they're just kind of band-aids really for your stress and your worries. They give you short-term pleasure, but ultimately you get long-term pain and you get the addiction. So you don't get out of the grip of that. And that's why it's so dangerous to start on that path. You need to be very careful about allowing yourself to get exposed to addictive behaviors, because as I said, most people are weak. And once they get in it, it's look at kids today with computers and video games and cell phones. I mean, they can't get their head out of their phone. They're addicted to it. And that's because it's all these brain chemicals that get hijacked and they grab your attention. If we go back to simpler living, where we can start having fun and pleasure with other things other than food. People will say to me, and they joke around, gosh, you don't get much pleasure out of food. No, absolutely. I get a lot of pleasure out of food, but you know what? I get a lot of pleasure out of lots of things. But food isn't my main pleasure. When I look out at the end of the day and I look, where did I have pleasure? It kind of looks like, a deck of cards. There's a little bit of everything in my day of pleasure. I run a nonprofit. I see clients and I do a lot of volunteer work, and I take care of my animals. That brings me enormous pleasure. If I was to win the lotto tomorrow, I don't think there's anything I would change other than having a large sanctuary, a farm. So yeah.
You sound like me. That's what my goal in life would be, have like a giant sanctuary,
Right.
on top of being able to have my own personal pets. And that would be my love of, I mean, that all my money would go for that. And also educating other people, of course. But yeah, no, it's like what's important in your life becomes so different when you finally got that solved, where you don't have to concentrate on your addictions anymore. I mean, I used to drink wine when I was first vegan, thought it was vegan, right? Well, that didn't help me one bit. I couldn't lose all the weight or anything. Greg, turn your video off, sweetheart. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, no, it's so easy to fall into the trap of just concentrating on what you're going to eat next and never planned ahead. I think one problem too I find is people don't think. I tell my clients, please think ahead what you might be having to eat the next day. So maybe you could prepare something today that will be ready for tomorrow. So you don't have to think about it anymore. It's right there for you. Chop your vegetables all up ahead of time, put them in the fridge, and have them ready to go.
Most of
So
my clients, I know Dr. Davis was talking a little bit about, somebody asked about, I think it was Hari Hachibu, or eating to 80% full as the
yeah,
Okinawan. And I agree. I do that with almost all my clients except geriatric. For the elderly, I don't follow that. I want them to get more protein, and I want them to get more food because most of them are deficient. But for everybody else, yes, about 80% full. And then what I have my clients do is I have them plan something after dinner that's fun so they can still have a high without having to fill that 20% void they feel. So I make them schedule that into their after meals, whether it's lunch, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. But usually the bewitching hour has to generally be at night, especially when people come home. They've been so busy during the day. It's after dinner now. It's all this mind that now it's introspection, and they don't like certain feelings. So the bewitching hour starts and they want to medicate. So that's when I have them do a board game, listen to some music, do some yoga, call a friend, go for a walk, do some artwork, but something where they can plan to have a little fun / distraction. And then they can deal with a little of that sensation, that they're dealing with mentally. I think that's very important.
somebody just spontaneously said, I've never heard of Pierre before. He's great, excellent information, and very accurate in his assessment of people in general.
Yeah, I've been around, I've taught at the veg conferences for 27 years now. Vegetarian Summerfest is probably the one that I attend all the year for 27 years. And all the other ones I've done with AJ and the other vegan ones, and a lot of fitness ones. And I attend other ones that, like the psychology ones, that I'll teach at. But I've been around a long time. So I'm not the new kid on the block.
Okay, next question. If you're not someone who has more than one or two pets, what is it about processed food that makes us hard to stop? What can be substituted for healthier vitamin fun? Walking in the park or what? I think you addressed that too.
Well, yeah, I think the main thing is just think of it this way. Just pretend that processed food is fun, or even whole foods, dates or potatoes, they're fun. But what I let my clients know is you only get let's say, like, I'm just making a number up. Like at my conference in Chicago, I do a whole presentation on an addiction, and I say from 7 to 9, I want to see 3 pleasures happening. One of them can be food, right? And then from 9:30 to noon, I want to see 3 pleasures happening. One can be food. So you can still have food in there, but you have to have pleasure from other things. You have to decide what that is. I mean, if I was to take care of animals all day, that I wouldn't even have to eat. It would bring me so much pleasure. Or volunteering for the homeless, or the animal shelters, the pet pantries that I do stuff with. You have to decide what brings you pleasure. Maybe talking to a friend, and maybe reading, listening to music, going for a run, exercising. I mean, I personally, even though I've been teaching fitness for 38 years, I would rather play a physical game with somebody like volleyball or tennis than go inside of a gym. I'd have more fun because I'm connecting with the person and talking and laughing and then exercising. So you have to decide what brings you pleasure. And the other thing is, and I say this cautiously, but I would try your best to not make your meals that they're just so, even healthy fats or healthy sugars, because then you're so used to riding highs with meals. It's like trying to just kind of be like the plains in the Midwest, just slow and steady. You just don't want these huge spikes of fats or sugars, especially with sugars. And then you come crashing down, even if it's a natural sugar. And then when you have a low, you want another high, and then you need another sugar. You want to have your goal should be a calm, stable brain. You don't want to be the bipolar where you have highs, lows, high, lows. You just want to be calm and stable. And that's why a whole food plant-based diet helps, but there is ways to refine that even more and fine tune it. But you have to find your pleasures, because I don't know, I don't know what you enjoy doing. But when I work with people coaching them, that's one of the main things I'm looking to find out is what brings you pleasure in life. And the other thing I also asked, I was with AJ the other day for our reboot. And one of the things I talked about, I was working with an alcoholic. I was at this men's meeting, and it's a kind of a very elite men's group where they have different levels like gold, silver, and platinum. And so they had me working with this platinum member who's obviously, wealthy and this and that. And he was an alcoholic. And I did a lot of things for him, but I'm just trying to tell you this one trick is that I said to him, when do you drink? When do you go to the bar or the tavern? He says, right when I get to, when I leave work, I go directly to the bar. And I said, okay. I said, I don't want to stop you from drinking. And he's like, what? I said, yeah, just don't worry. Just listen to what I'm saying. I said, you're more than welcome to go to the bar or the tavern when you're done working. The only thing is, I just don't want you to take any money or credit card to work. So that means you can take your driver's license. But when you get done with work, you need to drive back home, see the kids and your wife, and then you can get your money and credit card. And that was it. Once his kids came running up to him, they were so happy to see him because they're used to seeing him drunk. That just changed him. Now, that was one of the things. So I'm not trying to say it was everything. But what I did is I put roadblocks in his life between himself and the addiction. And that's important. You have to do that. As you get stronger, you don't need that stuff. But for most of us, we need these roadblocks, because if not, the devil's waiting for you to dance and he's calling you. So you need little angels in the way reminding you you're not going to want to dance with the devil. Let's take a detour and go this way. Does that make sense?
Yes, I have trouble with that very thing. I wonder what you would say to this. Not with myself, because I've been long past all the addictions and having to have anything right away. But some of my clients really struggle with not going out to eat all the time. They don't go home and prepare their food. They just go straight to the fast food. And then they tell me, oh, I didn't feel like cooking. And I'm having a hard time getting them off that pattern.
Well, one of the things is we hear a lot of talk about meditation, and I started meditating in high school. So that was like 82, 83. So I'm a big believer in it. And I teach at the yoga world conferences and everything. But let me tell you something. For a majority of my clients that are type A or T personalities, thrill seekers, they can't meditate. It's the worst thing for them, causes more anxiety. So what I want them to do is I want them chopping vegetables. I want them in the kitchen preparing meals, and their meditation is that 2 minutes of chopping celery. Then they take a break, and then they get back to focusing, 2 minutes of chopping cabbage, take a break, and then they get back to it. That teaches mindfulness and focus. When you go to a restaurant, there is none of that. You got everything brought to you. You also don't have control of your food. And, it's, depending on your income, it's expensive. I buy most of my food in bulk. So I buy 25 pounds of beans at a time, 25 pounds of rice. I go to the farmer's market and I'll buy a case of, say, organic blueberries. So I buy things in bulk. I save money that way. And I prefer to prepare things as much as I can, because I'm not saying for everybody, but as I'm working with a client month after month, I don't really mean this as advanced, but I'm using the term. The advanced level is you want to start connecting with your food, because most of us are disconnected, and people who have trauma are disassociating from themselves. Connecting to your food is a way to connect to yourself on a subliminal level. It teaches connection. So that's one of the reasons I don't like people to eat out all the time. Plus, I have my clients send me photos when they go out to eat, and almost every time their meal is glistening in oil. And they say,
Oh.
oh, the chef said there was no oil. I said, come on, it's good. You need a pair of sunglasses to look at this. I said, what they think is they didn't put a half a cup of oil in it. They put 2 tablespoons, but that's not what you should be having. And to be honest with you, I don't know of many restaurants. I'm sure AJ goes to a few, but I don't know many that don't add salt to the food.
Oh, just everybody.
Yeah. And then once you get the feel of that salt and that taste, when you eat vegetables or a diet that doesn't have it, it doesn't feel or it doesn't seem right. So you have to salt it up. But when you neuro adapt week after week, month after month, then all of a sudden, like, wow, you're starting to eat celery and you're like, this is so salty. Or you eat a tomato, wow, I can taste the salt. So it's about neuroadaptation, and that takes time.
I know we have quite a few restaurants here, but leaving the salt out is not something they do. No, we can take the oil out, but not the salt. But I think if I'm listening to you correctly, I think having my clients really go to the store, get the food, and chop it will help them break that cycle of always just going straight to the dinner.
And the next level is, I've never seen in my work for 38 years, families more disconnected. I mean, it is unbelievable how parents will give their kids $20 and let them go out to eat, and they're not preparing meals anymore. I mean, when we were kids, mealtime was a whole family tradition. And I think the secret is getting young children, engaged in cooking and preparing food. When I work with families, I always tell the parents, I don't care how young your kids are, I want them contributing something to the meal. I don't care what they're doing. If they're just putting things nice on the plate, or when they're able to cut the celery or break it apart, but add something to a smoothie. But you want children to partake in that and get involved in that. And that's also a positive energy when you're preparing your food and you have your energy going into it. There's a great instructor that's coming to my conference in Chicago, and he's known as the food yogi. And he's amazing because he talks about intention with food and the energy with food. It's such an important component. Again, it's all about connection, and we've lost connection with ourselves. We've lost connection, very unfortunately, with our family. You know, when I used to be in the retirement homes, I'll never forget, there was an elderly lady once at one of the nursing homes, and I saw her. She was just wheeled up in a wheelchair in front of the elevators, and the elevators would open and close. And I said to the nurse, what's going on with this lady? She said she's been waiting a year for her daughter to come to visit.
Oh.
What we do to the elderly is nothing short of a crime. Again, when you look at the blue zones, and you especially look in the Asian community, the elderly are revered and they live with their family, communal living. And not only is that a way to take care of the elderly, but the elderly then also teach the children, all that they have known. So we've done a great disservice. And I would say one of the biggest challenges is that I face today is it just reminds me of a plug being pulled out of an outlet. We're disconnected internally, we're disconnected from our friends and family, and we're just disconnected in general. So part of what I teach, Linda, is cooking and people to get back to cooking and connecting.
That's really wonderful. I would like you to address one lady or one person. I don't know where'd it go? I can't find it now. Oh, she said, eating out is my social connection, makes it with my friends, makes it tough. And it's better than being isolated. They don't want to go for a walk.
Yeah. Well, in that case, connection is, that's a way you connect, and you should continue with that. I agree. But make sure that you have control over your food, because you don't want to be connected and then, be an addict still. So make sure you still have some control over your food. And try to
call the restaurant ahead of time.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. What I have my clients do is call ahead of time and say, look, I'm really allergic to salt, oil, and sugar. My doctor doesn't want me to have it. So could you just make sure that I have that meal?
Perfect.
That's really important. But I think she's making a great point, because that is her connection, and that's important to have that connection.
Yes, it is really important. Yeah. Especially if she's older and doesn't have family and around or something, a lot of people don't have family.
Yeah. Those are the people that I just was with a client the other day that I said, that's your number one goal, is to now try to make connections.
Yeah. That's
But
wonderful.
so, as I was saying, I think a few things, making sure we sanitize the environment so we have less temptations in your home and when you go out. When I have my clients go to work, I have them bring their own foods and their own snacks and then ask their people they work with, please don't bring me donuts, or, I really prefer not to see any of those things, so they can control their environment a little bit. If you live at home with people who are eating those foods, kids or wife or husband, see if some of the tempting ones you can put in a brown paper bag in the refrigerator so you don't see it. Maybe put up a vision board or a collage on your refrigerator of all your fame, if you want to have Dr. Bernard or Dr. Davis, a picture of them or one of their quotes. That may motivate you, and it might be a little bit of a roadblock for you to go in that refrigerator. So you want to have those roadblocks, and you want to make sure that you still work with your family, because you don't want to fight with your family. That's a problem. But I was in Las Vegas. AJ and I had an event there, and my most interesting talk there was mainly they were the husbands of most of the women who were in our program, and it was to try to help them understand how to support their wives. There was a few wives in there, but most of them were men. And probably I'd say halfway through the lecture, most of the men were crying because they had no idea the damage they were causing their wives with all their foods that they would bring in parade. I said, when your wife sees your piece of chocolate cake in the refrigerator and she's going to work that day, it's banging on her brain as she's driving. She's working, it's banging on her brain. When she's coming home, she's thinking about it. So it's like a constant stress. You wouldn't take somebody who just got out of rehab for 3 months and then say, hey, look at this. This is vodka. Don't you miss it. It's like, that would be cruel, right? It'd be almost illegal. And so we have to let our family understand that food addiction is real, just like a drug addiction or anything else. So please help me and work with me. And a lot of times we'll get clients to have a refrigerator put in their garage, even if it's a small one, just to keep some of the junk food out.
Yeah, I've had some clients put their own little refrigerator in the garage and they just go there. Yeah.
And Chef AJ, she has her and Charles. Charles keeps some of his more tempting food in like a lockbox.
Yeah.
AJ can't get to it if she wanted to. Not that I don't know if she would, but I don't think she would. No. Just for extra caution.
I don't think she would. Okay, AJ, JP, I have a question for you. When did you go plant-based and why?
Well, again, like I said, when I was senior year in high school, the 2 oral reports I did were women's rights and animal rights. And so that's when I started. And why? That's an interesting. Why is because once I found out, I had even though I was in high school, I just didn't ever associate that eating a hamburger or chicken fillet was actually a real chicken or a cow. It just never occurred to me. And once I found out, I was reading about it, I said, wait a minute, I'm actually eating a cow or a chicken or a fish. So I stopped immediately. And then I think I used some dairy products. And then I read that a cow was being sexually assaulted to produce milk. I said, I'm done with that. So for me, it was an ethical thing. And that's why for me, it's zero challenge. Like there's no temptation at all, zero. There's just repulsion and disgust to ever have it, be around animal products.
Well, some people have a harder time staying on a plant diet if they don't have the ethical portion, I find. And so that really does help when people are aware of that. Like I have some friends, they just don't think about the animals. They've never been a part of their lives. They didn't even have a pet. Or if they had a pet, it was just kind of over there. Or, it wasn't something they treat like a family member like I do. And so when that happens, I find that sometimes their recidivism rate goes
for sure.
way up without that ethical piece. But that's the way it is. That's the way. That's who they are. So I can't blame them for that. They didn't get that connection to animals somewhere like I had.
Well, but I do believe that one of the things I have my clients do that are like that, I don't judge them, but I just ask them, hey, do you think you could watch Earthlings? It's a free documentary. And if you could just watch that, that would be great. And when people watch Earthlings or even Dominion, which came after that, that really makes their heart open up, and they see the suffering that these creatures have to endure, and then ultimately death. Not only for what we eat of them, but we wear them. We have enjoyment when we go to circuses and rodeos and SeaWorld. People are enjoying that. Even something like cruises. I mean, you have to realize
Oh,
cruise ships
yeah.
are dumping about 20,000 gallons of fecal matter per day per cruise ship in the ocean, not to mention about 150,000 gallons of gray water. And they're dumping about anywhere between 85 and 250 tons of pollution into the air, per day. And so, like, my compassion extends to all expressions of life, and it just doesn't extend to diet. It goes into everything. And that's why I'm rescuing fruit flies or, spiders or whatever, because they deserve to live. If you go and you poke them, they don't run towards you. They run away because they don't want you to hurt them. And if something doesn't want to be hurt, how dare we hurt that little creature?
Yeah. I have so many vegan friends who go on cruise ships.
Yeah. Well, they don't know better, though, because they associate the cruise with vegan and fun. But as soon as they start reading the statistics, the Friends of the Earth basically it was a report card, and the vegan cruises were getting a D+, D+ for vegan cruises. Yeah. So in vegan, any of these cruises and things are a nightmare in terms of eating, because anytime you go, there's something called the buffet effect. And that means the more variety of food you have, the more volume you eat. If you're eating a mono meal or just one type of food, you have a tendency to eat less. So people don't go on cruises and lose weight. They go on cruises and eat and gain weight. And then when they come back home, neurochemistry has changed and it's that much harder. Yeah.
I think that those are terrible for weight loss. Terrible. And just I heard that the sound the ships make are a problem.
So the acoustic experts, now I've interviewed actually one of the top submarine acoustic experts in the world, and he's not an animal rights activist or anything. He said there's no question that the acoustics that the cruise ships and cargo ships are causing, they're actually, what they've said is that it's the equivalent of 5 people going into a closet and screaming and not being able to hear. It disrupts their sonar. And that's one of the reasons these whales are running actually into ships. They're getting disoriented. They're not able to mate. And they theorize that maybe one of the reasons that all these animals aquatically are beaching themselves onto shore. So there's a whole host of problems with that. And again, compassion and reverence, it can't just be within. It has to spread to other expressions of life. But at first, for most of my clients, I'm just trying to get them to take care of themselves. And, it's interesting because one of the clients that I've worked with the longest, Shada, and she started with AJ and I a long time ago. One thing she says a lot when she gets interviewed or why she's so successful is she said, JP always said, people who love themselves don't hurt themselves. And so that's true. When you have enough level of love in yourself, you're not going to be eating things that are harmful or doing things that are harmful. And then eventually you just become a beacon of light and love, and you don't want to cause harm to any expression of life. You don't want to do that, but that takes time. Not everyone's there, especially people who've had abuse. There's a saying that says, people who are hurt other people. And so we have to be sympathetic to them. And I work with lots of those people. And, you're often, they'll come after you and say a lot of mean, nasty things. And I just acknowledge where they're coming from and the trauma they have. And I send them love and compassion because I understand that's not really their true heart, what they're doing.
Yeah. It depends on your experience, and everybody's a little different that way. I know that I've had trouble in the past with some of my Indian clients who don't want to give up whey because it's such a spiritual thing. It's a whole community and spiritual thing. They said the cows give out too much milk, so they need to take it away.
Cows don't just produce milk for fun. What I mean? And I've taught in India before. So I remember I took one job. I normally don't like to go out of the country, but I was invited to teach at a very famous ashram. And I went to teach Ahimsa. I went to teach love and compassion. And, they're all wearing white robes and it's all Om and all this stuff. And, the reason I went is because I saw their website and I knew, oh my gosh, there's lots of things they're doing wrong. And so what happened when I got there, the monks came up to me and they said I don't remember what the title they called the head people, but let's just call the king and queen, want to talk to you. And I was like, was I eating too much brown rice? Okay. So I went and had a meeting with them and they had translators and they asked me about Ahimsa and my definition. because they knew about me from the States. And so they said, how are we doing here with Ahimsa? And I went just like this, because this was what I was waiting for. I was hoping I get a chance to talk to them. I just kind of looked down and I went like that. And I said, there's lots of things here that are not kind. I said, you have wild dogs that are running outside and they're hungry. And I saw your guards throwing rocks at them. I said, if those were children that were hungry, you wouldn't throw rocks. And they said, we'll take care of that. I said, you sell silk in your gift store. These silkworms are boiled alive to produce these robes. So that's not kind. And I just went on and on and on.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that people don't know any better. Like, we're not being judgmental. I just give facts and figures. You decide what to do with the information. I don't make a judgment, but it's just that people don't know any better. Just like me in high school, if I would have known better as a kid, I'd never have eaten animal products, but I didn't know any better. Somebody had to educate me. So I just want to pass that on to others.
So, can you tell us a little bit how you run your programs for people?
Well, sure. First of all, I have a retreat. It's May 22nd to the 26th in Chicago. It's on a 1,200-acre monastery for priests and nuns where they go to school. And that's a retreat on both of my books. So The Pillars of Health was my first book on love and compassion, plant-based eating. And then my second book, Strong, Savvy, Safe, is a women's guide to safety and self-defense. So when you combine both of those books, that brings more of a balanced individual. You don't want to be all aggressive all the time, and you don't want to be too passive all the time. You want to have a beautiful blend. So we teach everything in there. I do a food lecture on food addiction. We have exercise 1 to 2 times a day. Then we bring in trauma therapists there, and we do a lot of group classes. And then I do classes which are really important on morning and evening rituals. And then I do classes on emergency preparedness and safety, lots of stuff. So that's one thing if you want to get immersed in what I do. My first book, Pillars of Health, is an easy read. And my second book, Strong, Savvy, Safe, that's more on safety. That's an easy read. And then I see clients one-on-one. So they can do a half hour, an hour consult. And then we work on whatever they want. Some clients just want to focus on diet and fitness. And some want to focus on the mental aspect, which I think a lot of your clientele and like Chef AJ's clientele, you all would score 100 on nutrition exam. You know what to do. So in those cases, I try to work with them more emotionally and what I call developing a code of conduct and a standard of living that is really important. I try to do that the most.
Have you had anybody who completely failed from the beginning? You couldn't reach them?
Well, that's a great question. In Chicago, my business partner was a therapist, a psychologist, and in my whole career back then, the only 2 clients I couldn't help were 2 psychiatric clients. But the only reason I couldn't help them is they refused to do any of the work. And, they were having a challenge with him too. So yeah, sure. If they can't do the work, usually it's they won't do the work. That's like Dr. Goldhammer said, it's easier to reverse heart disease or, high blood pressure or diabetes than it is food addiction. So when people have food addiction, it's tough, but I address it more, food addiction. The diet I address easy, but it's the emotional component. So if some people, like I've had some people do one session with me and 6 months later will call and said, I got really spooked during that first session because you're making me look inside. And I just barely having to lift the covers a little bit, and they were scared. So the truth of the matter is, if you really want to get healed and balanced, you have to be willing to look inside. But I go very gently with people. Like I said, I set the bar pretty low. I don't ever set it too high. And then when I get the feel to where you're at, then I raise it and raise it and raise it.
Like, I've had some people who were like me in the beginning who said, oh, don't you dare tell me to give up my cheese. I'd rather kill you than give up my cheese because it's so it's addictive as cocaine.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, the thing is, one of the things I've had clients say to me is they'll often say, you never tell us, to get rid of something. And I just try to add good into their life, and the good kind of pushes away the bad. So instead of me taking away your hamburger, I'm just adding vegetables to it. And then eventually when you got a burger with vegetables, then I say, could we have a salad first? And then they have.
Will that really work with somebody who's so highly addicted to the casein?
Oh, well, it takes time because they're neuroregulating, because then a month or 2 later, you can still have your hamburger, but could you try diet cheese or a vegan cheese? Then once I get them on that, they've got their burger still, but now they have a vegan cheese. Then I'll say, can we try a veggie burger with extra cheese, extra vegan cheese? So you have to work with them at that level and go slow. Now, when I work with military, FBI, US Marshals, fugitive retrieval experts, professional athletes, I just tell them what to do. They don't question it. They don't ever ask me anything. They just want to know what to do because they're so success driven. They don't care about how the food tastes or what anything. They just want to get to their goal. It's like when you're working with a celebrity that's getting paid.
I want to work with those people.
Well, now that's a good, that's a great comment. I've had some coaches say to me, JP, how could you work with these people who aren't motivated? And I said, you know what? I would rather work with them than anyone else. And the reason why is because nobody else wants to work with them because they're hard people to work with, but they deserve the love and care. Because remember, Linda, why are they having these addictive foods? Because they're in pain. They have emotional issues. They deserve somebody that is sympathetic and understanding. So to be honest with you, the last people I want to work with are most celebrities, rock stars, and athletes, because that doesn't really interest me. They're usually doing that, and there's nothing wrong with it, but more for vanity and performance, which is great, but that's not quite what I'm interested in. I'm more interested in the people that are just trying to get through the day and are in a lot of stress and anxiety.
I see. Oh, wow. That makes sense, but you really do take on the toughies, don't you?
Well, because it's like all my animals that I've rescued, all 20 are wounded. So the cat has to have her bladder expressed manually. A bird could be missing a wing. No one else will take them. So
how do you find people who want to join you for healthier activities?
What do you mean? Join me?
I mean, how do you have to make your own if you don't have any, and then try to find people? Sometimes it's hard to find people.
Oh, well, there's a lot of meetup groups that you can go online, and there's on Facebook, there's vegan meetup groups, vegan hiking groups, things like that. And then you can go to vegan potlucks, and you can also put up a sign, and you can put looking for a walking partner, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a lot of free. Dr. Lori Marbus had me make, I think it was 3 different exercise videos. And so I have them on my website, but there's lots of free ones you can get too on YouTube and things like that. You don't have to buy stuff. And that's a good way to start, to just pretend you're trying to get fit now. So when you meet somebody who wants to hike or play volleyball, you're kind of pre-training for that. So also, to me, one of the best things you can do is rescue an animal from a shelter, particularly any animal. But if you rescue a dog, then you kind of have to take the dog for walks twice a day or so. And not only you're helping the dog, but it helps you get exercise. And let's say you can't have a dog, say you're allergic or you can't have it in your condo or whatever, then go to a shelter and ask them about walking, because they want people to walk the dogs.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great idea. And by the way, you'll meet other people who might want to do it with you.
Yep. Sure. And
I love that idea. Yeah.
And a lot of people at dog parks too. And the other thing you can do is get a part-time job as a dog walker. So they actually pay you to walk dogs. Mm-hmm. Excellent
idea, because they need that. They don't have enough volunteers at all. In my shelter, I found out they kill 60 to 70 dogs per day.
I know it's hard.
So we have to try to get them home too. Get them homes.
And the other thing, aside from the physical activity of that, is going into, my background's all in geriatrics. And I'll never forget, when I first started, I would get there an hour early, because back then we had VHS and I had to connect the VHS and the TV and make sure it worked. And the seniors were already there lining up, sitting down an hour before I began. At first, I thought I was late, and I realized they were just lonely. So you can go to retirement homes and volunteer. And I bet most all of your people listening today have enough knowledge to be able to volunteer to do a free lecture on health or vegetables or fruits or making one recipe. Those retirement homes, especially those activity directors, are always looking for people to do free programs. I created the brain building programs about 30 years ago, because back then all they had was like Banjo Joe and bingo. And it's like, these poor seniors, they need more than that. So that's when I created the fall prevention programs and the brain building programs. I was doing the brain building programs, the first in the country, using a plant-based diet, different nutraceuticals, and I was traveling all around the country. I got so well known doing it because nobody was doing it.
That is excellent. You are just amazing, but you are ahead of everybody. So, I think that going to retirement centers and volunteering anything would be terrific.
Yeah.
Even just talking to them.
I'll never forget, I had one little lady that was in a wheelchair and she was blind. And she would come early, and I would always then get there early to come and hold her hand and just sit and talk with her because she never could see me. So I wanted her to kind of feel. And she always said, I have so much fun here because I love hearing your voice and hearing you talk about this and that. And these poor people, just most of them have never even been touched. As I said, that little lady that was in a nursing home, she was waiting for her daughter and seeing the elevators open and close all day. And so they haven't even been touched. I made sure that every senior, when I did my brain building programs, they were at tables. I always put my hand on everyone's shoulder. And for coming on, a great job. Because, that's something we don't have enough of anymore is touch. We don't embrace each other as much, and we should.
No. Somebody wants to know if you're taking new clients and what's the best way to get a hold of you.
Yeah, well, so johnpierre.com is my site, and I'll give you my email. And my email is foods, FOODS, FORLIFEJP at Yahoo. So it's foods4lifejp at Yahoo. Also, if your listeners go on to johnpierre.com, on the very bottom, if you fill out for the newsletter or the mailings that we send you a free exercise video of me talking about exercise and things, how to sneak it in. And then also look at the Pillars of Health Retreat. There's a tab there because that's coming up in May. And we only take 50 people because we keep it very, very intimate. And we basically, it's so funny because I'm not a money type of guy. So we basically charge almost our cost. Since we don't know the food cost till like a month beforehand, we could lose money, but we hope to maybe make a little bit of extra. And if we do that, it goes to my charity. If we make money, it goes to my nonprofit. I don't keep a penny. None of the instructors get paid either.
Oh, that is just wonderful, JP. You do such wonderful work and helping so many people in so many different ways.
Well, you're what you guys have done, and especially your son with VDog. I've called up before to buy cases and cases of product to donate to a sanctuary. And they said to me, JP, because it's you, we're sending it to the sanctuary. That was crazy. They helped the sanctuary that was really having a financial hard time.
Thank you. Recently, we've been sending to homeless shelters too.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And that's one thing I'd suggest everyone do to be extra kind is order some things from Linda, even if you don't have a pet, and keep it in your car. When you see a homeless person with their animal, give it to them. Because I constantly see people that are homeless that have animals with them. So you always want to keep a little food or give them some money. But if you have if you support Linda and VDog, you're helping Linda, and then you're helping a homeless animal also.
Oh, thank you so much, JP, for that. I think we have one more minute and one more question. Let's see. Do you have any pets?
Well, not pets. I have 20 rescued animals.
20 rescued animals. What type are they?
So I have cats and dogs, bunnies and birds and turtles. And so they're all rescued that are wounded or something's wrong with them. We don't take normal animals in. We don't adopt them out because we don't know who, they cost almost everything that I earn has to go back into their care.
Oh my goodness.
Laser therapy, acupuncture, they need
that's great. I know I have a mentally disturbed dog, and no one would take him because he won't go on walks because he's afraid to go outside.
Yeah.
In the daylight. So we have to take him out in the dark only. And then he won't even always do that because he hears any noise at all. He has to run. He was a street stray.
Yeah, I have one just like it. My one dog won't. As soon as they go out, they're scared and holler all the time. Yeah, you just have to do it slow. And I'll give them lots of hugs. A lot of my animals I'll carry. I'll put them inside my shirt and their head will pop out. And I carry them around the house for a while because they need to have that closeness. And Yeah, it's really
I think
important.
I want to give you a big hug for what you do. Honestly,
I
I
think,
want to give you a hug right now.
yeah, I
So
think it's so
pretend
great.
I'm hugging you, okay?
Okay, thank you. I think it's so great what your presenters, the doctors have done today, and then you putting this
Oh,
on. You know, I
thank
know it's a lot
you.
of work
Thank
and the
you. It makes me
volunteers.
so happy to do this. Is, as you know, it's your life purpose, it's my life purpose, and 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 there's nothing more important.
Right? There really isn't. Nope.
Our whole world is going to depend on this too. Our planet and
Oh, you know,
just our food systems and our have to change. We have to get off the factory farming and feed people healthy, whole food. So many people are dying early. We need to get people back on the track to
yeah,
lose the weight so they can live a long, healthy life and teach aerobics at 80 like me.
exactly.
So, you
Well, you
know,
know, and I think one of the things is people do get overwhelmed, and they say to me, you know, we've tried to have, we're trying to get funding for a property, and the investors will always say, I'll tell them what we do, and they misread it, and they say all these things that you say you want to do are too much. I said, oh, hold on, this is not what I want to do. This is what I do. So some people get overwhelmed. Other people, it's like you said, their life mission. It's not overwhelming. But I would say to people that are listening, just remember what Mother Teresa said: the smallest deed done is far greater than the largest intention. So any little deed that you can do is fantastic. Don't worry about doing what Joe and Fred and Mary do. Do what you can do. Anything. When I go into bathrooms and there's paper towels and it's messy, I clean it up. That's all. I clean it up. When I go to hotels, I take my sheets off, take pillowcases off. I put it in a nice area for the ladies, that whoever's cleaning. I make sure I don't have anything in the garbage can, so they don't have to do that. And I clean the bathroom. It's a
oh,
small thing that takes me 7 to 10 minutes, but I know it makes a difference in their life.
oh,
So
you are
just
just
think of that. But just think,
incredible.
what could you do? Could you pick up some garbage? Could you maybe just open a door, say hi to somebody, especially when you see a little person that looks lonely? You know, the other day I saw a lady at the library, and she literally looked like she was out of a nursing home, and she was squatting down eating an orange. And I went
Oh,
up to her, and it was cold, and I said, could I give you some money? And
yeah,
she just didn't quite understand. She said, no, I'm okay. But the point is I'm trying, I'm
yeah,
trying to help. And that's it. What's giving somebody $5 or something? That's not going to break the bank. Having some dog food in your car, so when you see a
yeah,
homeless person, anything,
exactly.
picking
Yeah,
up garbage. But what it will do is not only does it help that person, but it's going to make you develop this role that you're going to keep wanting to do good. And
right.
that's the goal, is to become a beacon of light and love. So all of our actions are loving.
Exactly. I carry bananas in my car to give to people waiting for money,
Oh,
making
nice.
bananas.
Yeah, nice.
So anyway, thank you, JP. You're just phenomenal. And I wish you well and prosperous, and especially with all your goals, because you are amazing. And I'm so proud to know you and have you as a friend. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. And I hope to meet someday Dr. Davis, because I haven't met her. She was
Oh,
brilliant.
yeah, she's amazing. Yeah.
Hope I see her at a conference, or she can always email me.
Yes, we'll make sure you connect. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you,
Bye.
everybody, for coming. I really appreciate you.